replace that person to write grants for the county. Now, just hypothetically speaking, which is what we're doing in the workshop, but what about if we stay with a contract person with TDC, but the grant writing aspect of it, let that grant writing be done by the county person? In other words, you would still have a contracted person with TDC, but you could tailor the contract differently than how it has been. But instead of factoring the grant writing into the contract person, you would have the grant writing be with whoever the county person is, being it's going to be a county grant.
Well, you'd have separate people. You'd have a grant person and a contract
You're saying
person.
not have the TDC director do any grant writing?
Yeah, just
You can do that, but we can handle all the grants.
Yeah, just strictly have the TDC person handle the administering of the TDC and all, but as far as the actual grant writing, instead of having the TDC director do the grant writing as well, use the grant writer that we're going to be hiring.
And you can do that, but you're right back in the same position you
Having
are
two
today.
positions instead of one.
Well, yeah, but you're also in the position you are today. You're still going to have a contracted TDC person.
If it were my business, I'd take a look at that 80,000 or whatever we bring in, and I'd say, we hire a director at 60, we got 20 for advertising. I said it before, the people that are on the TDC committee are smart enough to put out bids for marketing, and Billy Bob brings his marketing in, and they can spend 70,000 in marketing instead of 20. Let the TDC committee place the advertising and let them be their own director as a group. I know that's not real popular with them, but they're smart enough to be able to choose an advertising agency who can market to county. That's what I'm saying. The group is smart enough to choose an ad agency who is smart enough who can market to county, and you can spend 80,000 or 70,000 on marketing instead of 20, and then we'll figure out what to do about the grants.
You're saying have no director?
Have no director. Let the committee be their own director. They work as they're smart people. They're from business. They're from tourism, and let them get together and have proposals. I would send out and say, all you marketing peoples, give me a proposal on how you want to market the county. And they get 10 of them in, and they say, we choose you. Now you've got $70,000 to market our county. That's a lot of money all of a sudden. If you hire a director, you're going to pay the director 40 or 50 or whatever, and you got 20 left to market the county. You have no money to do marketing with. Then when you get that in one, you got two parts. You got that as one part, then the county, then we hire a grants person. Right now, we're talking about, I think, splitting a grants person between TDC and, I don't know.
Administratively.
I don't know exactly how that works, exactly.
That's easy to be done.
If that's easy to be done, the other is pretty easy to be done, in my opinion. May not be popular, but I don't see it being such a hard thing to do.
Howard's been waiting patiently.
And that's certainly an option as far as I'm concerned, as doing something like that. But if we're talking about hiring a part-time person for the TDC and having that person be a county employee, and if you're asking about what the opinions of the board members are, I am in favor of that.
David, do you have a mechanism where you could have someone that could devote 20 hours a week to
I have a plan that I'll be unveiling come budget time that will address that very thing.
And then I think it'll cut back on the expenses from the TDC. And one of my dreams has been, if we can possibly do it, we'll have to talk to TDC about this, but it's helping fund the small expenses that we do have at the community center with TDC money. We can spend $5,000 a year and not have any property taxes whatsoever going towards it.
The TDC is for, I don't see how the community center is marketing the county. the TDC is marketing the county to bring people to the county.
Well, we did agree that a boat ramp, for example, would be a good way to bring people. We heard about the rock dog tournament.
That's correct. I can agree with that, but I
It's along
can't.
the same lines. I know it's a stretch, but it's along the same.
I don't want to do any stretches.
That if you could attract more people to the county,
Well, I want
Going to come here to see a community center, in my opinion, Randy.
to add that the reason that I'm in favor of having a director, I mean, we will have to decide about being contracted or actual employee, but there needs to be a go-to person, because you've got 9 or 10 members you've got 9 or 10 volunteer members on the committee now that's each doing 9 or 10 different businesses or thing on a daily basis, and it is beneficial having a go-to person that Visit Florida and these organizations can go to that one go-to person, and then this one person can go and represent. This one person that would be dedicated to that would be able to go and actually represent the county, because a lot of the things that the county represents happens in the middle of the day. So if you're an employee, if you're a volunteer of a business or whatever, then you may not necessarily be able to get away from where you're at to go represent. But if you've got a dedicated director that is paid to do that, that's one person that you could send and be that go-to person. So I would be in favor of us having a director, and we have to work out whether it's contractor or employee.
Ralph, you want to throw your head in?
Yeah, when I first started looking into this, I looked at it from the standpoint of supporting a county employee and how do I get comfortable with that and support that. But I'll be honest, the more I looked into it, the more I thought it was a bad idea. By statute, this board is required to give oversight to the TDC. We're not required to have a TDC director, but if we have a TDC director and, then the TDC director works for the county administrator and we're a charter government and we can't give orders to a county employee, it gets real complicated of who's working for who and who's taking orders from whom and take the rec board. This board, we can't direct Brian Roddenberry to do anything. David can.
Well, that's how it should be, I think.
And
These are department heads.
right? And do we want the same thing with TDC? I think that we're limiting our options when we make a county employee. I think that, first of all, we need to have people on that TDC board that we trust, we have the talent. We don't need to make this decision because we're not willing to give the proper oversight. We're required to give the oversight. And so if we don't like what's going on, it's a reflection of us and prior boards not giving the proper oversight. So to me, that's not the big issue. If we've got a TDC director, I think we need to give the board that we have full confidence in the power to decide. Do they hire one person that's the big TDC director and it's a one-person shop and they can do it all, or maybe they figure out that we'll pay part of the salary, whatever we allocate, and we'll let them have 1 or 2 assistants. I don't think that we increase our options by limiting them. And I think if we make it a county staff person, it's going to be complicated who answers to whom, and we're not going to give that board the proper flexibility. And then what happens when the board directs the TDC director to do something? Now does the TDC director have to come to David and get permission? Can I do what the board asked me to do, and when can I do it? And to me, it just makes things much more complicated.
That's a divergent.
Like I said, I'm in favor of keeping it a contracted person, but just the grant writing aspect, to let the county employee grant writer do the grant writing.
I would like that as well.
And then the TDC contractor person run TDC and represent the TDC as a contractor.
If y'all don't mind, Pam, do you mind speaking about this at all?
I don't mind.
Okay, let me talk a little bit more, and I'm going to ask you to come up and give your 2 cents.
I think Dr. Kessler had his hand raised.
Yeah, go ahead.
As I said, the idea of having a volunteer position or a position of the TDC board itself running the show is an option. I do think we need to at least try a system with a county employee as the TDC director. We've had this model in place as a contracted employee for a while now. I think a county employee answering to our administrators still has to answer to, the county employee doesn't have to answer to us, but the decisions and the flow of what's happening at that TDC still becomes our responsibility to oversee, but we don't oversee it directly. We oversee it through the county administrator.
I just want to get more money out for marketing. And if you hire everybody in town to work for the TDC, you got no money for marketing.
Pam, you want?
If I can ask a question while she's coming up, we've mentioned a couple similar boards in this, like the Recreational Advisory Committee. Do we have any similar committees like that, and I don't know the answer to this, that have a county commissioner appointee that serves on that board?
Rec board, I think, is it that they spend their own money they raise at the
There's
parks?
that has a commissioner.
As a county commissioner, because the way I see it,
On the board.
I'm the county commissioner's appointed there now, and I'm, I see my role as bringing information back to help you guys give proper oversight, and I almost see it as, if we're gonna have a director that works for David, then I don't think we need a county commissioner being there, because now, in a sense, I work for David, by that
statute
loop.
requires that, but-
Statute requires that, it's exactly right. We can't get around that. We've got to have someone on this.
But there's other boards that we have that commissioners serve on as advisories, but the TDC is a little different.
Right.
The way it's structured than any other committee that we have outside of the Recreation Committee.
Go ahead, Pam. Just your thoughts. I know we're talking about how to...
I think,
how to
I
structure
think the
TDC.
bottom line is what Commissioner Thomas said, which is you have to have faith and trust in your council. The way that TDC is set up, if you're going to collect bed tax, you have to have the council. And it has to be set up the way that Florida statute says. And Florida statutes lays it out so that you have representation from your local governments, but then the rest of the members are the people who are the experts in that industry. They're the ones who know how to market tourism because they're in that business, and that's why the whole thing is set up that way in the first place. So that the argument about whether your director is contracted or an employee, or how much you pay them, or whether you have an administrative assistant and another director or whatever, should be under the best advice of your tourist development council. If you don't have that kind of faith in your council, then change your council. But as soon as you take the leverage from your council members on what they know is the best way to promote your tourism efforts, then you might as well be the Tourist Development Council. And frankly, you can talk about wanting more money out there for marketing, but since you don't really know what I do, I don't know why you don't, but you don't. I spend the largest majority of my time on direct marketing. The other person one other person that we're paying right now to do marketing is for social media, to do the Facebook and the Twitter and all the YouTube and all of that stuff. That is direct marketing. In rural tourism, and there are other counties who are rural, but their tourism is not underfunded, like Franklin County. They got plenty of money to do their tourism. But in our case, we have limited funds, and so what we try to do is leverage the small amount that we have to make the biggest bang in the market. And we do that by partnering with the original Florida region and getting the media writers and the travel writers and the articles and stuff in these major publications that I don't care if you don't have anybody under salary, you can't afford them. We produce product that visitors want to market. The Appalachia Bay Maritime Heritage Paddling Trail is a perfect example. We just launched that the other day. I can't tell you how many people I have already had to call me wanting to know, well, are the maps up yet? Well, yes, now they are, but that's what visitors want. And so it's not about a paid advertisement in a magazine. It's about coordination and partnership and facilitation and on-the-ground marketing. So, I
I think Jerry's the only one that I can see that's of the opinion that we don't need a TDC director. The real point we're trying to get, and no offense at all, Jerry, but
No problem.
the point I'm trying to get to is, should that TDC director be a contract employee like you were? And we were really lucky to have you, Pam, to do this job, but we have to design it where it has to be fit all subsequent TDC directors, not just you.
It was never a special consideration.
That's not what I mean. I mean,
Nor should it be going forward. Like I said, the bottom line is, do you trust your council? Do you have any faith that your tourist development council knows their business?
I have 100% total faith in the people who are on that council. 110% faith that whatever. I just don't think they need a director. I think they can choose an advertising agency who will market to county. It's fairly simple, in my opinion.
Well, that's an avenue you can go down, but you've got very limited resources to do that. Very
Well, we
limited.
just saved all the money on hiring a TDC director. We can
I don't
put
care
that.
if you do. You got $90,000 a year. That does not go very far in paid advertisement and marketing.
Okay.
I
anyway,
mean-
my thoughts were
But
really
again,
whether,
if you trust your council, that's not what your council recommends. So to say that you trust them 110% is not really so, because if you do, then you follow as best you can their recommendation. And I have heard over and over, well, there's not enough oversight. You have the same oversight in terms of the money that we spend, the grants that we get, the RFP processes, all the purchasing requirements, everything we do, we have to do by your county procedures. And we are held to those, believe me. Nobody lets us, not do that. So you do have oversight, but in a contracted position, you don't have someone who's in potential conflict. Right now, I don't know, I haven't talked specifically with David about this, but, he may have a different idea of how tourism dollars should be spent and what the director's duties should be. I don't know, maybe he doesn't, but he might.
Pam, would you
And
agree
then-
though that the TD, I don't mean to interrupt you, but TDC is supposed to recommend how to spend the TDC dollars?
Yes.
But the board could totally go a different direction.
Oh, yeah.
Legally, they could do that.
You have as far as I know, yes, you can, now you obviously have to spend it on tourism, blah, 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 all
Right,
that
right.
stuff. Yes, you do.
Okay.
You have the authority. I'm not trying to say that you don't have the authority to do anything you're doing. I'm saying what's the right thing to do.
Well, the difference, I guess, that I wanted is difference between a county employee TDC director, like you were a grants director, versus a contract TDC director.
And to me, the difference is, it is much easier for a contracted person to answer to and carry out the direction of the council, because there's not potential conflict. You've got conflict right now between your council and at least one of your county commissioners in terms of how funding, how the tourist development funds should be spent. So if you have a county employee who answers to the county administrator, he's the boss.
Right.
But then again, you've probably written in there, but you answer to the council or whatever. I mean, if the county administration decides we need to spend some of this money for boat ramps, you're answering to two different,
He couldn't change budgetary allocations, obviously, but I've been over with this Cherie, I don't know how many hours, and her question always is, well, what if the board wanted this person to only work on TDC 5 hours a week and took the rest of the time doing what he wanted him to do, which I'm sure he wouldn't, but anyway, that's a potential situation, and my best answer to that would be the TDC would come to the board and say, hey, your county administrator is taking all our person's time up. This is not what that's the only thing I could come up with. You're right, inherently there is a problem having a county employee be TDC director, at least on that one point, that David potentially could, because we can't make the employee like Heather. Heather doesn't answer to David, Heather answers to the board. You can't fire Heather, he can't tell her to stop working on this and work on that.
she's contracted, she's not an
Right.
employee.
Right.
And that's kind of, I mean, I guess that's kind of the point. And
She does, you know, we do give her direction on what to work on. She is a contract, she's not a contract employee, she's a contract or.
I mean, you have,
what the
you
TDC
have the
does.
oversight, whether it's a county employee or a contracted position. And I'm just saying, why go against what your local experts in tourism are recommending for you to do? I guess the question is, instead of, you know, why not do this, why?
Is the TDC board recommending having a contract employee?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know I talked to Sheree about it this morning, of course, that's just one person talking.
And I'm in favor of it from having been on the TDC myself and was also past chairman of TDC one time, but I've seen the benefits of having the contract employee, but we were lucky to have Pam who could also do grant writing and multiple things, but to go forward, we may have someone who would be very well at being TDC director, but not as well at being grant writing, and is a hybrid form of that would be to have a contract TDC director, but then let the grant writing be done through the county grant writing person. And whenever you do that, I mean, you wouldn't have to pay that. If you're only going to have the person 20 hours a week, you wouldn't have to pay them $40,000 for 20 hours a week.
Yes, one question
Yes.
before we get to you. Are there grants that are specifically only for the TDC?
Visit Florida grants,
Okay, so in other words, a county employee couldn't be in charge of that Visit Florida grant because it
Oh.
goes.
They don't care who administers it, but those grants are specifically, you know, to the TDC, whereas every other grant is to the county, even
Right.
if the TDC administers it.
Like the BP money, for example, is that granted to the?
That's granted to the county, yeah. The Visit Florida is the only grant programs that we go after that the TDC is actually able to be sort of a grantee rather than the county.
Howard. Go ahead, Howard.
Yeah, if we can't get to a position where Commissioner Moore was suggesting of having the board be
The TDC director.
no TDC director or volunteer, okay, then and I personally feel that there's going to be better oversight with the county contracted county employee, okay, and that it doesn't diminish what this board thinks of the suggestions of the Tourist Development Council. I mean, they've always been there, they've always made good suggestions, but I think a different model is needed right now, and if we can't get to the place where Commissioner Moore is, then I'd like us to at least seriously consider going with a county employee.
And that was my original suggestion also.
I'm just curious, what's wrong with the current model? Is it just the amount that you're paying? Is it, what's the issue with a contracted director? What's your issue with it?
I'll say one more thing. There's an old song that you gotta know when to hold 'em and know when to fold 'em. I can fold. I understand that I'm not gonna have my position. I'll go to phase number 2, that my phase number 2 would be we have let's say a part-time director and a full-time TDC grant writer. I don't think we can split grant writing. I don't think the county can have a grant writer and share that grant writer with the TDC. I just don't see, if we're gonna have a grant writer for TDC, I think that person needs to be full-time, and I think maybe we can have a part-time TDC director. But I think grants are free money. Well, it's taxpayers'
No.
money. Well,
There's nothing free about the
well,
grants.
I understand that, and believe me, I understand, but I think if I can't have my way, then I'll go with having a full-time TDC grant person and a part-time TDC director. That's county-controlled.
One of the, you know, in these discussions, number one is I haven't been 100% willing to have this happen. As I've trepidly driven into the TDC. My idea of oversight from the county standpoint was strictly from an administrative standpoint. Could I administer a marketing budget? Yes, I've administered large marketing budgets, but do I want to and do I have the time to? No. It's not something we got a group of folks that are talented, they can do that. And the only way that if it does, and I'm not advocating, if it does come towards a county employee, it only, with oversight I'd have of that person wouldn't be on the marketing side, it would be on the physical management and adhering to the policies and answering all the 4,000 questions that my directors ask me every year and guiding them and through and making sure things are followed through in the correct way. But the marketing side would stay with the TDC. But I just wanted to make that point clear. I've been to that ball game, been to that dance, and I could do it, but it's not my best use of my time. It's the best use of time for the volunteers.
And it doesn't, again, the oversight that you have right now is the same. I can't do anything that's against your purchasing procedures. I have to go through all of the same steps that everybody else has to go through. And you do like Heather has asked me to do in my contract, and I have a liability coverage so that if something I do isn't right, you have some recourse. But otherwise, I mean, it does having someone as a county employee just because doesn't really give you any more oversight. And in terms of the grants, I explained this to my TDC at our last meeting. I mean, I'm a pretty decent writer, but the biggest piece of my success in getting grant funds, and if you look back at the grants I've done from day one in this county in 1996, is because I'm heavily involved in the project itself. And so you have to know how to put together a project. You have to know your industry or whatever it is and what's best for it to get grant funds. I know that the right process, for instance, for those paddling trails that we just did, was to put together the people who are the experts in doing that kind of thing, come up with a good plan, and then produce these kinds of marketing materials. And I know that not because I'm a grant writer, but because I work at TDC and I work in tourism. And so I put together a project that people know is going to work. I mean, it's rare that it's just about the words that you put on the paper. It's about your your foundation and your expertise. So, if you have a good TDC director, they'll be able to get the grants that I've been able to get. If they're even half, if they're a decent business person, that can write a sentence or two. If they're good at marketing and they know rural tourism, which is different, then you'll be able to go after the grant funds.
And we did talk about whichever way it goes, the TDC, of course, having input on whoever's hired for the job, too. That was a big thing.
I would hope so. Would hope so.
No, we're not trying to
So
take
you
the
don't-
TDC over and become the TDC. I don't want to do that. I mean, like I said, these guys are the experts. We're talking, basically, it's the structure of how this TDC director.
Just a full-time.
Right, and I
We don't want
I still
day-to-day
don't know
oversight,
what's
daily.
wrong with the model that you have now. I haven't heard
I would think it'd be
anything.
cheaper, to be honest with you, if it was a county employee. If you only need 20 hours a week for TDC director, whatever it is, 20, 30 hours a week, it would be easier to mesh him with one person. That way that person could be offered a full-time, with benefits job, and you'd have a 40-hour-a-week position instead of just a 20-hour-a-week position.
So you guys are gonna match a half and half?
We're talking
You're
about,
gonna
that's what
pay
we're talking about, is using
using county money?
a person, half that, in my mind, I may be speaking totally wrong here though, if you had, let's say you were a grants director again, 20 hours a week you would work on grants, the county would pay that, the other 20 hours a week you'd work on TDC, the TDC would pay that portion of it.
I don't see how you can do that, Harvey.
I don't know how you could do that either. And all this talk about grants and stuff, part of the, if you're successful at getting grants, you better have the time to administer them correctly. And so that's why, and by the way, it's only been on 2 occasions, you have authorized extra hours paid from a grant for me to administer it, because 20 hours a week is and by the way, I've never just done 20 hours a week except for the 1 month that I was under breast cancer treatment. So every other time, you've always had significantly more than 20 hours a week. And I'm saying that not for, a pat on the back. I'm saying it because you really do need more than 20 hours a week. And the TDC had a specific plan for their director to slowly phase in as the revenues were available, to slowly phase in additional hours and work themselves up to a full-time director position. And that's a smart way to do it.
What about
And
legal
it's-
counsel too, Pam? I think we're getting to the point now where TDC needs its own legal representation.
Well, we've been told that. It's rare that we have, I think we have got an attorney now that will look at our contracts and stuff that we need them to look at. There's very few, this is a rare thing, having a $500,000 grant. So there's very few things that we would have that would need an extra legal review. Bottom line is, though, our attorney is gonna review a contract that ultimately, because it's with the county, has to be signed by you, the chairman. So my guess is it still has to be reviewed by Heather before you sign it. So that oversight is still there. It's just that she's looking after your interest, and we have someone looking after ours, which is probably in 99.9% of the cases going to be the same thing. But if that's the way it needs to be, that's the way it needs to be. But we're not spending a bunch of money on an extra attorney, if that's what you mean. If you think it's going to save money to not have to hire another attorney to look at a document, it's not going to save you much money because there's not that much to look at.
Now, right now, you are, forgive me for being naive about it, you're not paid by the hour, right? You're 30 hours
I'm
week,
paid.
basically. It's kind of,
Well, my
You got
contract
more than that.
specifies hours, that I'm gonna work a minimum of 20, that my pay is for 20 hours a week. And whenever I worked less than 20 hours, I reduced it as if you were paying me by the hour, so that you didn't pay a full month's pay when I didn't work the full 20 hours each week, the one time that I did that. So it's, it's kind of by the hour, but it's not really. And again, it seems to me simple that your TDC has a plan for what they want to do, how they want to move forward with their director, how they want to come up with a pay scale, that's a minimum up to a maximum. They have the recommendation, and I can't figure out yet
All right, let me ask,
why you can't take it.
let me ask,
What's the problem with what they're doing that
all right, let me go into a different direction. Let's say that we allow you to just, you've got a good group, they choose your director and they choose your grant writing. So your director does everything, they pay whatever they want to do. I can go along even with that if I have to, but I will not go along unless I can get more of the people in the county who are bringing people to the county on that board. We've got,
the statute set what the
no, it
board
says who you
is.
have to have, it doesn't limit.
Yes, it does.
Does it limit?
Yes, sir, to 9 members.
Okay,
and I
sorry.
think Heather's
And
been trying to-
again,
Please-
I've
please
said
take that,
this every time I've gotten to the podium,
Okay.
that our meetings are public. And there's an
I'm not
opportunity,
I'm
and
not
it's not
questioning
even just
that.
at the meetings. There is plenty of opportunity for people to give us input, and we listen to it, and we follow through.
I'm not
One of our
questioning.
biggest adversaries was Jack Rudlow. And today, he's not, our cheerleader, but he certainly knows that we listened to what his issues were, and we've moved forward, and we're doing better, and we're promoting him like he'd like to be promoted, and those are the kinds of things,
Let's let Heather chomp at the bit of it.
I just wanted to add one thing to the discussion. While all the options that you are discussing are obviously legally available to you, purely as for background and for something to think about, I would be remiss if I did not talk a little bit about oversight, especially as it deals with some of the issues other TDCs in the state have dealt with, that we've been involved with other clients. And that is, for example, Okaloosa County had an independent TDC director who was under the supervision, and this is nothing against any TDC board, but they are part-time volunteers. And there was an incredible amount of theft, fraud, embezzlement, ultimate suicide, millions of dollars lost. So no matter what structure you choose, my advice would be greater county oversight.
And I would say, people embezzle and do all those kinds of things when they're employees of a business. I can't even, again, what we're talking about here is not Okaloosa County. We're talking about a $90,000 a year revenue, at least right now. And again, I couldn't begin to know how to get a check cut without it going through the staff in the county administrative office and the clerk's office. I don't know.
It went through all of that. So
Well, then-
there was,
But if it can do it as a contracted position, then somebody can do it as a county employee, because I can't do anything that one of your employees, everything I do, all of your employees also have to do. I don't know why it's...
Ma'am, you're defensive on this, and we're not saying that you've ever done anything wrong.
I'm not defensive.
Okay. Well,
Because I know I've done nothing
I know,
wrong,
but-
but here's what I am. I'm passionate, and I haven't come to this county commission for, several of these meetings because I was just looking after my own health and well-being, but I'm here today because I have TDC members who have supported me on every step, and I'm here to support them. And I'm saying to you, you've got a group of people who know what they're supposed to do for tourism marketing, and I am asking you as a taxpaying citizen of the county to take advice from the experts on your council. You have representation from Commissioner Thomas, who is a very diligent, very focused, and very aware of things individual, that I don't think, there's going to be too many actions of the council that he won't be heavily involved in, and can make sure that you have the oversight that you need. We go by county procedures. You can require liability insurance. You can have the safeguards that you need, but have some respect for the people who have been doing this most of their lives and know the right way to do it. And that's what I'm asking.
I guess you're kind of speaking for the TDC board, are they worried that they won't be able to tell this person what to do if it's a county employee? Is that the concern?
Some of it.
Let me let Jean McMillan speak. She filled out a card. Okay.
Jean McMillan, Oklahoma Bay. I'm totally not prepared. I appreciate everything that Pam has said. I think she's made a good presentation. I know she's been through health issues, and yet she's still maintained as long as she's still been doing her job. One thing that concerns me is that I see things looking from the outside in that I think could improve Wakulla County as far as the actual tourism, the facility there in Panacea. And I have nothing to say personally against any of the existing members that are on the council. I have questioned individually some of you that I don't understand the longevity, because they are volunteers and they are professionals in their own fields, and so I'm sure that they're very busy with their own business and their own lives. So I see that there should be a turnover. I don't mean there are 9 on the board, on the council. I don't mean to a washout by any means of anything like that. But I have asked for things, and I have been told Well, you have to remember that we're just volunteers. So I question the time frame that these good volunteers give of their time. And again, I want to say I do appreciate it. And I'm not here to have a dispute or lose friends. I've always believed that where you should come from is keep the friends you have and make new friends. But I am aware of the fact that there are others that would be interested in serving on the council. I've been attending the meetings, I guess since about maybe July, August of last year. And I have been interested from the standpoint of having a business that is required to collect the tourism tax. And so I am not interested personally in serving on the council, but I've heard things that have been said publicly and personally about special interests, special motivations. I do see that I would like to see more be done about RV camping and to see more done about motels. This interest in bringing people in for the day is wonderful, but they bring their lunch with them and they go home. And I think Commissioner Moore said this afternoon, get more in here that come for the weekend. I think this was mentioned in about the Panacea event that they just had, and that people like that come into the county and say spend $500 instead of the difference. I do see a difference that I am interested in seeing some changes. I think that the county commissioners must have procedures for how members are appointed to the various boards. I would like to see the commissioners at another meeting or at this meeting discuss. I haven't heard anything about ever putting anybody else new on the board. I just always see repetitively changing of dates. And I do believe that by the statutes, I don't think it's set to a 4-year term. But I do feel like at the end of that term, before it's expired, that there should be applications submitted, and every member that comes up should have the same right as anyone new to fill out an application. But don't close the door and not ever let anybody else new come on the council.
There's only two.
And I'd like to say, I'm definitely in agreement. I imagine everyone is, and I do think that, you know, as someone's term comes up, like she said, the statute certainly allows us to reappoint that person, but I do think that we ought to take all the applications. There may be another...
Every other board we got.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if there's been a problem with that in the past, but I think that we need to make that commitment.
This is just for a clarification point. Commissioner Moore, you had mentioned, you know, the possibility of not having a TC director at all and perhaps sending everything out for bid, which, you know, has its own merits. The only thing I would question, though, is if you were expecting the TDC board itself to do this, they would have to meet more frequently, as they are under sunshine law. They can't sit there and talk amongst themselves and say, let's move this action here quicker.
And
so I'm wondering about from a timing point, you know.
in an ideal world, what I would do is I'd hire
A marketing firm take over like 6
company.
months or a year.
Well, I'd just hire a marketing company and I'd say, I want you to promote Wakulla County and turn them loose. They have a fee for doing that. Let's say they get 20% of the money that you give them or whatever.
Well, these are, my only concern with that would be, I mean, many of what, let's think about, in terms of tourism here, we have events, we have places and things like that. So in essence, when you think about each one as an individual project, you probably need to think in terms of multiple vendors possibly bidding out for something. Maybe some would be, more event-focused, like event. There are literally companies devoted to event marketing, whereas opposed to tourism destination marketing, which is a completely different matter altogether. So
Unfortunately, my proposal's not gonna fly, so you don't have to worry about that.
I'd like to see David get with the TDC guys and see if there's some sort of model they can come up with for the person to be a county employee. I still like that route. And if their concerns can be played about this person not doing the TDC's work or whatever, that's what I would suggest.
I don't think you can have a county grant writer and a TDC grant writer in the same person. Maybe you can, but I think you've got a conflict of,
And it may be that if it's only 20 hours a week, the only way you can realistically do it is a contract employee. I mean, that may be what the solution is.
I just like the flexibility. You may find one person that, is a one-person team, or you may find that it's best you having 2 or 3 people working that role, and I don't know.
Let's start a second workshop on this. Go ahead, Howard, but we need to give them some sort of direction.
Yeah, I think if you look at the past record of this board and the TDC board or council, this board has strongly supported the TDC ever since I've been in the county. And so, the board right now is struggling, I think, with how to try to get better oversight and possibly more efficiency. And I would ask that while we're exploring these things, that the TDC support the board in their efforts as well.
I don't
I think we have no consensus whatsoever.
Basically, I only have one issue, and that's just get the money out to marketing. So I have no criticism. I have the people are great. The people are good people. Even Mr. Dixon over here, Mr. Walt Dixon, is a good person. And I think we... So I have no problem whatever, and I know this is a hard thing to do. I just don't see that you can have the grant person serving 2 masters. But my only deal is that I think I know marketing. I've always been successful in my marketing of my companies, and I know how I did it. But I have confidence in the people who, the advisory committee. I do have confidence in them, so I'm not going to go there.
Well, I just want to say, first off, I've got full confidence in those members of the TDC board, and like I said in the past, I know everybody can say, have different opinions about what they would like for us to be, but we were a long way from where we were 6 or 7 years ago, and that's due to those members that have been on there. I'm supporting the TDC's recommendation of having a contractor person, but I also think that the person that they're doing the grant writing can be the county employee grant writer. So it wouldn't be like you'd have a TDC grant writer and a county grant writer. You would just, whoever the grant writer is for the county would be it. The TDC director wouldn't be doing any grant writing. The TDC director would just be the go-to person. It would be contracted. It would be the go-to person for Original Florida and Visit Florida and those people to go to, and it would be someone who could administer the TDC functions of it, go and represent TDC during those 20 hours, but the grant writing could be solely done by the grant writing person for the county.
Is that 100% TDC grant writer?
No. It would be a grant writer that would write grants for the county, but also if there's a grant to be written for the TDC, that they could write that grant as well.
All right, it sounds like we got some sort of direction here. Ralph, contract. Richard, contract. Jerry,
I'll go
along with the TDC, what they want.
I will.
I can go along with that. I've been advocating for a county employee for years, but
Jerry, do you understand what I mean about the grant? I mean, the grant person, the grant person would be an employee for the county, but they could write the grant for the county, but I'll also,
As long as it doesn't cost anything.
yes, but if there's any way,
So they're gonna be trying to write grants both for TDC and the county.
County grants.
county grants, because the
TDC
it's
money is our
ultimately,
money.
the TDC grant is ultimately a county grant anyway.
Get sued over it, they're coming to us,
Yes.
they're not coming to them.
Yeah, so the grant, you know, so all the grants would actually flow through one grant person, whether it be a TDC grant or a county
That
grant.
person needs to be a full-time.
Yes, I believe we need a full-time grant person.
You've got something coming, you hadn't said anything, but you're thinking full-time grant writer.
And I'm thinking,
A grade A grant writer, triple A grant writer.
Now, next question to beg is if they are going the contract route, we do have oversight of their budget, and how much of that budget are we gonna allow to be used for this contract director? Exactly. Now, I don't know if that's a discussion for today or
Well,
for another day.
I wanna add something else in there too. I think Pam, if I wanna ask Pam, your contracted hourly rate is $35 an hour, isn't that what it is? Well, you know, we could reestablish that the contracted hourly rate be $20 an hour or $25 an hour. We don't have to go with $35
I'd
an
rather set a
hour.
dollar figure, because Pam also gets a stipend for health insurance, and
Right.
if it's a cut, used to.
Not this year.
No, sir, I have never gotten a stipend.
All right, we're not being argumentative, but there was a, you were on the county health insurance plan at one time, correct? And then you got money to compensate when that was taken away because you couldn't be on the county health plan.
No, it was all part of my pay. It was literally written as part of my hourly.
Again, Pam, I'm not arguing with you, but you were on the county health insurance plan at one time.
Yes, and it cost you nothing and you gave me nothing.
Richard.
Other than-
Yes, sir. That's one of,
Trying to set a dollar amount for the TDC.
No, and I'm saying the dollar amount didn't change. What you paid me didn't change. And in fact, I got less when I was on the county health insurance, but then, yeah, I got it back when I wasn't. So it was all a wash. In terms of the money spent, you didn't spend any more money when I was on the health insurance as when I wasn't.
There's gonna be a new TDC director, I guess is where I'm trying to get. The point is, we need to decide. what-
Okay, basically speaking, on the new TDC director,
they wouldn't have to be 35 an hour.
that's because they're not doing grants. We've got a,
Yes.
now, David, we've got a quad A grant writer, not a double, but a quad A grant
Yeah,
writer.
yes, but
So we don't have
understand,
to,
it's more than just writing grants that are involved with grants.
well, I understand, we gotta have somebody put them on the ground.
Well, you got, there's a whole big, that's a big, but yes, we're working to take care of that, but understand, it's just not,
I understand that,
That's
because we failed in the past getting things on the ground.
just one thing to get them is another thing to implement
But
them.
we gotta have both.
That's right, and I'm gonna present a plan that'll get us part way there. We're not full way, but I can't afford to get full.
Well, we gotta have the, first thing, in my opinion, we gotta have a great grant writer.
Right.
And we're worried about getting them on the ground after we get the grant, but not really. Not really.
I mean, when you're talking about the pay, why wouldn't it, again, come from your council to recommend to you what they want, their budget? I mean, they already have to do that. They have to submit their budget to you and
That's fine,
justify
but we don't
it.
necessarily have to agree with it, that's all I'm saying.
I didn't say you did. I'm saying it would be a good place to start.
Yes, I agree.
With
And
what?
another good place to start would be the scope of work that Cherie presented the other day. Did that include grant writing? Did that include everything you do now, basically?
So we're gonna let the TDC, and I have no problem with it, are we talking here that the TDC then will hire the part-time director?
That's the direction that it looks at.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. You folks are good people.
Just like what they have now.
Yeah.
And then we could use the full-time grant writer to also write a grant for TDC.
Grant writer is a whole different subject. Exactly.
Yes.
Let's cross the
Could I
TDC
just
bridge
say for the
first.
record,
It's
too,
coming back
though,
as
you're,
a,
I'm sorry,
is this coming back as an item for the board to vote on?
I have to.
It has to, yeah.
any contract that.
Which one of y'all gonna bring it up? Because I have no idea what to bring
Well, I
forward.
think the general direction was the TDC board recommended they want a contract employee to replace Pam. A contractor, I should say contract
Contractor.
employee. We've agreed to that.
Well, I
Valor had it.
I have it.
Is that gonna be a?
And what they recommended was 55% of gross projected revenues as a salary package. Now,
That's too much for.
Okay, that's a
we're
different
gonna-
discussion.
That's
gonna-
not,
That's what I'm saying. The dollar amount is another discussion. What I want to get resolved is the person going to be a county employee, or is it going to be a contractor for the TDC? And Richard said contractor. Jerry.
I'll go
Ralph,
along with
Yeah.
I'll go along with that.
Yes, sir.
I've advocated, as you know, Pam, for years that I thought the TDC director should be a county employee, but I'll go along.
I will.
Especially because of the 20-hour week, it's gonna be kinda hard to make that work. And maybe when it kicks up to more time.
But as far as the contract, there's things we can work
Howard, I
out.
think it's still the mindset that should be a county employee, and I respect that. And I understand the reasons why.
I would think you would want, Ralph, I hate to speak for you, but as you are the TDC commissioner appointee, is you come back with an agenda item,
Glad to.
laying this out, and then I would also suggest you lay out some options for pay. Okay, here's 3 options, here's what the costs are of each one of those, here's the pluses and minuses. Then you guys can, in that one item, vote yeah to move forward, but then you also need to, it's one thing to say, yeah, here's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Another thing, at that same time, you say, here's what we're gonna pay them.
Now, I think.
Get it over with and be done with it.
Ralph brought something similar to this. One of your suggestions was making it their pay on a sliding scale versus how many grants they got. I didn't really like that.
I would stabilize it.
At all.
Well, it sounds like we're leaning toward taking grants out of the TDC role.
Let's look at the paper, the paper Sheree gave us. Pam, you worked with Sheree making that job description, right? It was pretty comprehensive, remember, so let's start there, and then the big thing we gotta decide is if they want 55% for that one position, are we okay with that, or are we not okay?
And I would also suggest, Ralph, and I'm sure you would do it, when you bring that item back, before you bring it back, take it before the TDC. And get their recommendations on which way. That way you've got all the full input, and I'm not telling you you're gonna do that anyway, I'm sure, but I'm just saying there's something, and then come back, and that's when you maybe can nail this thing shut.
And my thought is, I mean, if we come up with 55 or 45 or 65, whatever that number is, I don't think that we should be identifying that as the director's salary. I think we need to be identifying that as the salary budget. Now, that might pay 1 person, 2 persons, 3 persons,
I wouldn't call
depending
it
on...
salary, I call it subcontractors.
Well, exactly.
Call it salary.
Pay in whatever capacity. But that way, the TDC board has the ability to say, well, we need to pay this person to do the gopher work, this person to do...
We pay Jones Edmonds to go do our water testing at the landfill. They're not employees, we don't pay them a salary, we pay them for a service that they're contracted to do, so.
But if we set that limit, then they can go spend within that. And I'd like to also speak, just a little bit about oversight and just clarify, Pam, definitely not my intentions to say that anybody's doing anything wrong, but I think that, probably the reality of the situation is, in years past, there's been a outsiders versus insiders view of TDC, and I think that's been the conflict, and, regardless of what was justified or right or wrong, we've got to figure out how to move forward and not fall in that same trap. So I think the oversight portion is on us to make sure of what's there, you're following spending policies, and the new person's going to have to do that also, but I think moving forward, we need to have a better handle, us as a board, and I'm going to take that on my shoulders that, if I'm not informing them of that, then shame on me.
Right.
But I do think that we need to make sure we're feeding that. And part of that comes in, I've seen these battles in years past where a group of people would come up and try to almost run you out of town, and then commissioners would stand up and say, no, we're behind them. I think that what we need to do when an issue is raised, whether it's somebody that's a friend or a foe to the TDC, we need to follow that out. Even if it's coming from somebody that we think is crazy and it's an unfounded attack, let's address each one of those issues. When someone says, hey, the TDC is spending too much money for this person because this person is a friend of the director, well, that's either true or false. Now, let's go figure that out and not take one side or the other. Now, let's not say, I fully support the TDC and so that can't be true. Or let's not say, yeah, they're always corrupt and so that's got to be, I hope as a board we can have the commitment that when those things come up, let's put them to rest. And if it's true, let's fix it. And if it's false, let's shut it down.
Not forget, our entire public works is run by a contractor.
That's
Yeah.
right.
It's Cleve, who's not a county employee, so we do have oversight over it.
All right, you've got...
Certainly, if anybody doesn't get the road graded, we're the ones that gets complained at, so.
Right, I see 2 parts now. As it tapers down, we got a grant person and we got the operation of the TDC. forget the director, forget marketing, forget everything, and we got the TDC committee. We got two pots of money. We're gonna have one pot of money for the grants person, and we turn the other pot of money over to the TDC to hire the director, to do their marketing, to do everything that they do. Then they have to operate out of, they have to operate out of that budget. You've got the grant person, whatever we're gonna pay this grant person, then everything
It's out of
else.
county funds instead of TDC, and I'm not opposed to...
No. It
That can't
doesn't, the market, the grant person doesn't come out of county funds.
But my point is a lot of these grants, we're gonna get an administrative fee
TDC funds.
for, are you talking about for applying for the grant? You know, but if we get an administrative fee to manage the grant, I'm not opposed to the county keeping that fee and using that to pay the salary for the grants writer that works for David.
As long as they're doing the administration, they should be
Exactly.
getting paid for it.
Exactly. So that way, in a
I
sense,
don't have any problem with
any
that.
grant money that's coming in is still paying for that, and that's not having to come out of general
So
revenue.
you're saying the grant person will be a county employee then? A county employee paid by the county, is that correct?
I think that's what we said.
That's what I would...
In theory, we have one grant person, and they take
Okay.
care of TDC grants, rec department grants, you know, each department.
The administration fees from those grants would go to offset the salary of that
David
grants
has
person.
budgeted to take a part-time position and bring it up to full-time, right?
I've got a full-time and a
That
part-time,
person
yes.
would be the one that would handle the, because Pam did both, really. You administered the grants, did TDC director job, and applied for the grants. The next person will probably do half of Pam, I don't know, not half.
The
You know what I mean?
the applying for,
Huh?
and the applications, the person will do the applications, and the
Whatever
administration.
whatever the TDC wants to put in their scope of work that y'all drew up.
Oh, you mean for the TDC director?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they'll be administering the grants, because that takes a lot of time, I assume.
It does, which is why you include that in your funding request.
So how many grant people will we have after this?
If we implement, I'll have,
We don't have anybody.
we'll have two full-time we'll have two grant positions. Half of what Cherie is doing currently is grants, but those are grants, those are particular with federal grants, some of the larger things that we're working on. Then we'll have a part-time person that is currently Susan Fleming is doing right now that will be leaving. I would either like to replace her and/or I've got a position in this upcoming budget for a full-time grants person that's all they do. So I'll either, if I can talk Susan into staying, I'll have a person and a half. The problem is, you just heard the auditor say,
We used to have.
we have one of the larger grant awards of any county. You gotta realize, we're doing that with very little staff, and it's wearing our staff out, and I've got to have some help, and then we wanna go get more grants. I wanna double that, or triple that. But to do that, to administer, the problem is, it's not necessarily, it's like this USDA grant is very intense, but other grants aren't quite as intense, but once we get them, that's when the work starts.
That's right.
Pam, it was you and.
Can I finish up on this?
Yeah.
I'm
for a
sorry,
second?
Dr. Kessler, I may or may not have answered your question, I'm sorry.
No, you're taking the words out of my mouth, though. You know, our auditor also said that we had dropped off in grants, and there was a reason for that, because we had decimated our grants department under previous administration.
Right.
We had a grants department that was at one time 2.5 people, okay? And even with 2.5 people, with the number of grants that we were writing in the county, there were problems in the administration and closure of those grants. And we had problems, all right? So we need to properly staff,
Right.
and that's really
Until they
important.
took away the grant department.
And so that grant department, for me, is a priority to reestablish, because now this year, you know, as the report came in, things are getting better as far as we're out there getting grants again. It's going to mean all that work that's going to be coming down, and just the idea of getting grants is not enough. You got to be able to administer them and close them.
That's right.
Pam remembers those days very well.
I sure do.
It was you and who else was it?
Cheryl worked with me for a while, and Pam Albrecht worked with me for a
Come
while.
on, Greg.
And I just want to, just for the record, on the council, I mean, I think it is a great
Hey.
idea to have, you know, some sort of application process, so as the terms, you know, roll over, you can look and identify new members that would be interested. But just for the record, You've got 3 of those positions that are elected officials and have to be. So they have to be appointed by the county commission and the 2 city governments. And then the other positions have all turned over with the exception of 2. So it's not like this whole board has been there for 10 years. We have had new membership, and the ones that have come on as new members have been asked to be a member because they put in the volunteer time and the work as a volunteer and not a council member first. Jackie Youngstrand voluntarily took the minutes and the things for the council meetings for a year before she was actually a voting council member. So when a position was available, naturally, she's the person that they wanted to do because they saw she puts in the work, she's interested, she's passionate, she does it. And so, it's not quite as, there have been turnovers and there have been new things, and there's a great way to keep that going.
So we will work on that.
You guys keep using different terms, and I think that's one of the problems, that we're not communicating on the same page. A grant writer is not a grant coordinator.
Correct. I understand that.
And you're right, we used to have a grants department who did everything. They wrote grants, they coordinated grants, but even then, and I think Pam would agree, we even had a decentralized grant department where Public Works would administer some of their grants, and you have different, that's how it's working right now anyway. You've got all of these different departments that receive different grants. ESG is administering your solid waste grant right now. They write it, and they coordinate it, and they administer it. All right? There's no person in the county who's eyeballing or watching over that grant. I think it was 2 years ago, the auditor actually had a finding on grant coordination and said, you need somebody to coordinate every single grant in the county, because it's so broken up that this department's running this grant and this department's running that grant, and there's not one person who knows what's going on, and therefore it was hard to get finance all the information they needed to wrap things up at year end. So you do need a grant coordinator. No matter who's writing the grants, no matter who's administering them, somebody needs to consolidate all of that into one house, in one location. Now, the other thing was, and you can do it any way you want, but right now, when ESG gets a grant, or we get I shouldn't say ESG, when the county gets a road grant or whatever, they don't take that administration fee. It goes right back into the project. The general fund doesn't take the administration fee to cover the cost of our current grant people. It just goes right back into the project. And so I think with very few exceptions, whatever the grant administration or costs are allowable, it goes right back into the project right now, with some exceptions. And so if you may be able to pay for your person by taking the administration costs from all the different grants. I don't know. Not everyone has them, and they're not all the same, but it's not being treated equally in every way right now. Thanks.
Well, that would help us pay for our grant people.
Well, part of the reason you can't take advantage of those fees is because unless they've done one recently, a lot of them require you to have an indirect cost allocation plan. I don't know if y'all have done that. Have you?
We did one last 2 years ago.
I mean, that's been approved at the federal level?
Just call it.
Okay, then you could absolutely be charging a percentage of your grants.
I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank everybody for coming.
Thank you.